Our top story tonight is being overweight an illness. The American Medical Association thinks so, voting to classify obesity as a disease. But their decision could have a wider impact than just the 1/3 of Americans who are obese. Here to weigh in, Dr. Sridhar Podaratsu, the CEO of Vital Springs Technologies, and Dr. Stephen Reisman, director of the New York Cardiac Center. Welcome to you both. Dr. P, I'm going to start with you. Is being overweight a disease?
No, I think it's an addiction. I think that calling it a disease has some serious implications. It may help doctors and hospitals who are hoping to bill more in terms of calling it a disease, but it does nothing in terms of what we really need to do is hold people accountable for their behavior in terms of overeating and a serious addiction. It's eroding into this country's productivity, and calling it a disease could be really detrimental.
Very big problem. Dr. Steve, you disagree. Why?
I disagree. I think it is a disease because the definition of disease is an abnormal condition which interferes with normal bodily function. The American Endocrinology Association, the American College of Cardiology have both felt that this is an abnormal, both endocrinologic and hormonal condition. So calling it a disease, I think, also will be helpful because we want to get people treated early for obesity. We want to work on diet, on exercise.
There is the whole financial aspect to this, so let's get to that in a second. But I want to know, if the AMA says, hey, obesity is a disease, what does that mean in terms of how it's treated? If it's not a condition, it's a disease. What does that mean as a practical matter, Dr. P?
Well, the AMA's guidance has no ruling or regulatory effect.
Right.
You know, it's a suggestion, but it's not by any means changing regulation, so that tomorrow morning people can't start charging or coding obesity as a diagnosis. I think that the guidance is significant. I will not disagree that obesity is a significant metabolic problem, but it is a predisposing condition to diabetes and hypertension. If we start calling diabetes a disease, are we going to call smoking addiction a disease?
All right.
As a predisposition to lung cancer?
So I'm overweight. Can I help it? I mean, at the end of the day, Dr. Steve, what you seem to be saying and what Dr. P seems to be saying is, look, we can change all that. It's just a matter of getting somebody to make the right choices in the marketplace. But not everybody can lose a lot of weight.
Well, I think if you work on diet and exercise, that's a step in the right direction. I agree with the fact that legally it doesn't change anything tomorrow, but certainly look at all the discussion on the news and the media today about obesity. People become more aware of it. And, there was a study in cardiology a couple of years ago that showed that obesity alone, not including hypertension or any of the other, factors such as cholesterol, increases the rate of fatal heart attacks in men in a long 15-year study, 60%. So not to call that a disease, I think, is not giving it the right due that it deserves. Increase in 60% of fatal heart attacks.
Well, I mean, I think it's well known that being overweight causes physical health problems, mental health problems. Dr. P, people seem to be saying that, if we just raise awareness about obesity, that's a great... Don't people know? People know overeating causes obesity. People know lack of exercise causes obesity. They seem to be making their own choices here. The AMA's decision, how does it affect that?
There's a lot of marketing campaigns. Look at Mrs. Obama's campaign called Let's Move. It's been nothing but just a marketing campaign. It really hasn't put a dent in terms of reducing either childhood obesity or others. There's a number of things that have to happen. You have to have stricter regulation on the food manufacturers. You have to have regulations in terms of salt and sugar composition. And ultimately, you have to hold people accountable to their behavior. Yes, there is a genetic predilection.
I mean, should it be the law, or should people make their own choices? Dr. Steve?
I think people need to make their own choices. But if you have the insurance companies start covering it, people can go to a doctor, can get more monitoring, more motivation, and maybe they can lose weight before they develop insulin-dependent, diabetes, heart attack.
Expensive.
And it's cheaper to start early on and get these things going than waiting 10, 15 years down the road when they develop metabolic syndrome, which includes hypertension, high cholesterol, diabetes. Let's get it, it's cheaper to do it earlier than wait till later.
And we're showing people now the medical costs for the average obese person, $1,429 higher than for an adult of normal weight. You just pay more and more and more. Dr. P, to you, is this something that should be covered by insurance routinely. And what does that mean once we're all under the Obamacare rule?
Insurance companies are going to pounce on the opportunity to be able to charge for obesity as a diagnosis because it only enables them to help cover the risk and the costs associated with a lot of people that are predisposed to getting diabetes and high blood pressure. And similarly, doctors are going to hope that a lot of things that they may be doing gratis now in terms of counseling or otherwise that really don't have a diagnostic code could be charged. But at the end of the day, you may also get consumers who fall back on the system and say, now that it's a disease, well, I'm just going to let the system pay for it, just like I might diabetes and hypertension, and don't have any personal accountability. So there is that risk.
Dr. Steve, respond to that, if you would.
I think the doctor will get involved in a little different way. I think the doctor will be able to motivate the patient more. The patient won't be fearful that they can't afford to see the doctor because they're obese. They'll be able to come to the doctor if it's covered. And the real important thing is if the doctor's successful, he'll prevent the more expensive problems of hypertension and heart attack down the road. So if we can get them into a doctor who's really going to push them, I think it'll work out better.
Interesting conversation. Thanks to both Drs. Poderatsu and Reisman. Thanks so much for coming on. A good conversation.